Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. We have attendees coming in as we speak, but it's about 1:05 now, and so we're going to get started. So thank you very much for taking the time for the informational webinar. We're excited to be speaking with you today. My name is Ziggy Majumdar, and I will be presenting the slides today. I'm also the designated contact for this solicitation. On the panel here, we have a number of our other staff and team members that are supporting both Natural Carbon Solutions, the events, and other initiatives. So how about our events team? We've got Tricia, Adam, and Kelly. Feel free to say hello. They're hosting the webinar and will help shepherd us through as we also go through a survey further in the presentation. We've got Joe Borowick. Joe, do you want to introduce yourself? He's our program manager and team lead for the Advanced Buildings team.
Joe Borowick, team lead for Advanced Buildings.
Thank you, Joe. We're missing, unfortunately, Siobhan Watkins, who also co-manages the Natural Carbon Solutions Initiative. Okay, Bob, we've got Bob Carver as well. Bob, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello, Bob Carver, Senior Project Manager on the team with Ziggy and Joe.
Okay, we've got Chris Cooper here. Chris, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Chris Cooper. I'm with General Counsel's office here at NYSERDA providing support.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have Renee here? I'm not sure if we have Renee Serbu. And Ben Fox. Ben Fox also supports our operations. Okay, so we don't have them today, but hopefully between all of us, we'll be able to address as many questions you have today. And for those that we can't address today, we will follow up with the frequently asked questions document that will be posted online. And as a reminder, all the information presented today it is in the PON summary document, and it's meant to facilitate your understanding and your application process. Next slide. Yeah, so just a housekeeping reminder, we are all webinar attendees are muted except the panelists that you see. And so the way we're asking you to enter your questions is in the Q&A box on the bottom right-hand corner. And only the panelists can see them, and we'll aim to answer them roughly in the order they were received. And we're going to have a couple pauses throughout in the different sections of the webinar, and then as well at the end, where we'll try to cover the remaining questions. But whatever ones we can't respond to today, again, we will post in a frequently asked questions document online no later than Tuesday. And as I said, we'll also have a survey. And you don't need to respond to that, but it gives us a better idea of who's applying, how many applications we expect to get, and to which challenge area. Next slide. So as a reminder, proposals are due August 20th, and we advise you to submit early, possibly no later than the day before, if you can, just to avoid any IT issues or any other complications. We do encourage everybody to team up, and if you're looking for team members, there's a teaming list we will be updating roughly weekly, maybe more often, on the PON website. And that's not an endorsement of anybody that's on the list, but it's meant to facilitate proposers that are looking for complementary skill sets that might not have them on the current team. And so we just strongly encourage you to check the PON website. PON stands for Program Opportunity Notice for funding opportunities. And we can also take questions via email and respond where possible. And so we do plan to have these slides and the recording also posted by next week for those that can't attend. Next slide. So next slide is just a rough agenda, which is just to give you an overview of the funding opportunity. This is in the innovation. We're in the innovation part of NYSERDA, where we de-risk and catalyze novel approaches, to address our energy goals and climate goals and other benefits to New York State. And so our agenda really is listed here to walk through the different sections of PON 5180 round 2, and then most of the time will be used to address the questions. As a reminder, it was also released on June 26th, and we have 2 challenge areas that are available for funding at this time. Next slide. So this slide is really just to give you an overview of the Natural Carbon Solutions initiative. It intersects with a few of our different initiatives here, both with buildings and negative emissions. And the overarching goal of this portfolio is really to accelerate cost-effective and scalable ways for reaching New York's net zero emissions goals and energy goals, with a focus on negative emissions, carbon sequestration, energy conservation, and other value streams such as reducing waste-related methane and maximizing the value of any one project by touching on all of these related value streams is part of our goal, and which often involves making better use of raw materials we have here in New York State. And as some of you may have seen in the press release, around 1 projects were announced, and we'll now go into the 2 challenge areas that are part of the current funding opportunity, AKA also known as PON 5180 round 2. Okay, next slide. And yeah, so we're getting into the challenge areas. We can go to the next slide. So there are 2 challenge areas here for round 2. The first one, innovations in green cooling, that addresses the challenges to date for scaling up approaches to passive cooling using green infrastructure. So this is with a priority, especially on urban areas and disadvantaged communities. It also aligns with the recently released Extreme Heat Action Plan, and to address the challenges of extreme heat waves, especially in areas such as New York City and other dense urban environments. And the second challenge addresses for buildings, carbon negative buildings, for the need for an increased supply of building products that support improvements in building energy efficiency, but can also address the challenge of having those materials and products be more sustainable by minimizing embodied carbon, the emissions and energy associated with their manufacture, and in the case of New York State, also making use of local feedstocks, such as agriculture and forestry residues, for the potential to be carbon negative. More details are available in the PON document. As a reminder, each proposal must address 1 and only 1 challenge area. However, any team is free to submit multiple proposals in both challenge areas. And so some of the statistics and benefits are listed here. There's way more detail in the PON summary document, as well as the guidance documents for each challenge area. So we'll walk through those 2 today. Right now, attachments A1 and A2 available online, and those really help you help guide each proposal relative to each challenge area. So we can go to the next slide, and these also give you the relevant information for how what we're trying to accomplish in this PON relates to other efforts across the state, so that your proposal is meant to be additive to all of these existing efforts. So getting into now challenge area 1, innovations in green cooling. And so what we're doing here is really walking through some of the content that is in that document online. And so some of the motivation for this is that, as many of you experienced recently, extreme heat waves and the need for passive cooling approaches to support electrical cooling approaches and the grid. And prior work that was supported by NYSERDA and many other recent studies suggest that nature-based approaches to cooling, such as trees, green roofs, green walls, agriculture, other forms of vegetation, can be highly effective on a per area basis, but also need a much more significant increase in the scale to really provide appreciable mitigation of urban heat islands and other co-benefits. And despite many ongoing efforts and case studies, vegetation is present on a very small percentage of the feasible area, particularly in heat vulnerable communities in New York City and other New York State cities where it can offer the greatest potential benefits. And as you may have seen linked in the document and is available on the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, DEC website, is the Extreme Heat Action Plan that also explains how this innovation challenge relates to some of those priorities. So attachment A1 has a lot of that information so that proposers can better understand how your approach is additive in comparison to other related efforts in the state and elsewhere. And the required attachments that you need to submit, such as the form fillable narrative, will also help provide you the relevant questions so that you can help make the case of how to advance the status quo. Next slide. And so this slide, this slide does contain the text that is in attachment 1, and it's just this lists out some of the requirements for each proposal to this challenge area. And so every proposer should just familiarize themselves with that section for the challenge requirements to make sure that their proposal is responsive, and also that it is eligible. And there are a number of things here which we don't have to read through, but we can go over later. So we can, I think, go to the next slide. And so what else is listed here? This is also in attachment A1. There's a lot of text here, so I won't read through all of it, but you can look through the attachment A1 to see what are some examples that the team has come up with as eligible approaches that have been identified. These are not exhaustive, but they provide some examples of more specific innovations that we've seen that may be able to address some of the key barriers to scaling up nature-based approaches to passive cooling to be more effective and also cost-effective and feasible. And if you have questions on eligibility beyond what's explained there, please contact us. There's also listed specifically approaches that are not eligible in that same document. The next slide. Now moving on to challenge area 2. And just as a reminder for all my panelists, feel free to interrupt if you want to chime something in. That's fine to help communicate the right message or clarify something that you might think is not clear. So for challenge area 2, which is building products that can support energy efficiency with the goal of being carbon negative. So as a reminder, this is distinct from challenge area 1. The PON summary document provides requirements and evaluation criteria for both challenges, as well as schedule and budget information. But beyond that, there are differences in the A1 and A2 documents. And so this is guiding you specifically for proposals in this challenge area. So as a motivation for this, as a recap, reducing the energy use in buildings is a top priority for New York State, and is key to achieving the goals of the Climate Act, as well as supporting affordability and reliability of the electric grid. And there's increasing recognition that products and materials used in buildings, even though they may support energy efficiency, can have negative consequences for global warming and the environment. The three major motivating factors for this innovation challenge are the building energy use, the building embodied carbon, an increasingly changing policy that prioritizes the energy emissions associated with building products, and also, as part of our negative emissions portfolio, how building products can act as a form of carbon storage, right? And achieve negative emissions to also support New York State's 2050 net zero emissions goal. So multiple value streams all in one that could all be potentially accomplished by the building sector. More details are there in attachment A2, as well as many references. So please make sure to review that in detail. And there's, just as in challenge area 1, there's the same form fillable narrative, which we'll go over a little bit later, that provides you with relevant questions to make your case. And so we can go now to the next slide. So this slide is a synopsis, also from attachment A2, of the requirements for each proposal in this challenge area. And so this is something you should review. The three major requirements are here, and more additional information is provided in A2. So I can just pause here for a second and have people take a look at it, but realize that all of that information is contained and you should use as your guidance document if you're applying to the challenge area 2. Next slide. And just as in challenge area 1 and challenge area 2 in the A2 document for buildings, we do list some examples of eligible approaches that have been identified by the team that has informed the scope of the funding opportunity. They're not exhaustive, but you provide proposers with examples of the needs for New York State buildings and regarding how to achieve goals of energy efficiency, cost effectiveness, and lowered embodied carbon for building products with the potential to be carbon negative. So once again, if you have questions on eligibility, please contact us. The designated contact is listed. That's myself as well as the team can look at the questions and try to address them as completely as possible, and take a look at also what is specifically not eligible that's also listed in this document. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, so we have a few questions that we're going to pause for, I think, about 5 minutes now and take. And so, all right, so we've got a few questions here. So do we need a DUNS or state ID number to apply through the portal? I believe that a DUNS number, does anybody know that offhand?
No, that's not required.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Bob. So that's not required, but probably what's a good idea for everyone is to walk through the apply online button, start walking through that process to see exactly what you need, and then more questions might come up. To whom should we address letters of support and recommendation? You can address them to the Natural Carbon Solutions, or since I'm the designated contact, you could address them to me as well. Like, I'm not the only one, as I said, managing the portfolio, but I think that's fine. Anybody else have a recommendation of what's typically used?
Sometimes the contract administrator for the PON can be.
Jelena Baxter, right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
I'm
Okay.
not sure. Yeah.
Not sure. We will we'll take that up for,
Let me see if I can find that out quickly on the side here.
okay, okay. But we'll post that either way. So I think it's, yeah, we'll post that just for consistency so everybody has the same instructions. Okay, so teaming, someone submitted a teaming list submission. Yeah, so we may not have updated the teaming list, but we'll be sure to do that by Tuesday with everything we've gotten to date. That's when we're going to be updating the PON website with other attachments. So we'll be sure that everything is listed by that time, if not sooner. And then we're going to aim to update the teaming list at least weekly, if not more, depending on how many inputs we're getting. Okay, for A2, does a solution, okay. You have to hit on all three of those things. Energy use, embodied carbon, and products as carbon storage. Yes, has to hit all three. Those are the requirements. And you know, that should be the goal, you know, of the proposal, if that's not already the case.
Ziggy?
Anybody else? Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, I was just going to go back to the last question. Check the document. The designated contact for contracts is Renee Serbu. So that would be another person that a letter of commitment or recommendation could be addressed to.
Okay. We will, yeah, we'll put that in the FAQ document. Is that who it typically would be, to Renee?
That is who is listed in the summary
Yeah,
document.
for contracts. Okay. Yeah. So we can do that. And we'll post that as well online. Okay, so there's questions about a demonstration project. Would the grant money, which is contract money, cover the manufacturing and installation of the product? You know, for the demonstration phase, the installation and evaluation would be something that is in scope, and I would refer you to more details of the PON summary document, and we'll see if we can clarify that further. But this is something for phase 2, for the phase 2 projects. Maybe it'll make clear. I'll try to address that a little bit later. So let me okay, some of the questions coming up, I think we can hopefully get to in the next section, and if they, you know, if they persist, then we can take them on. So because I think some of them might be answered in the next slides. So let's move on to the next slide, the funding and the schedule, and we can go ahead to the next one. Okay. So this shows you the structure and might help answer some of the questions that are coming through the process. So this is the figure 1 that's actually in the PON document, and it explains the process for both challenge areas, the way we've set it up. As you've seen, there are differences between them, but there is a common structure where it outlines the timeline starting from the phase 1 proposal to the phase 2 proposal and anticipated success, following the end of the phase 2 period performance. So, on that last arrow, what's just indicated is that success metrics for us are often measured, including things like project replication and co-investment as a result of NYSERDA funding, which demonstrate that NYSERDA funding was really catalytic for the market in de-risking new approaches that are then able to self-sustain, right, and help accelerate New York State's clean energy goals in a more cost-effective manner. And so the proposals awarded under phase 1 will receive up to $50,000 to complete a predefined set of deliverables. And then at the conclusion of phase 1, the phase 1 awardees can submit, a proposal under phase 2. And so the phase 1 award does not guarantee a phase 2 award. And in the case of phase 2, NYSERDA might fund some, all, or none of those phase 2 proposals. And that will become part of if you're selected for a phase 2, a contract will be negotiated and agreed upon. So this process is similar to prize-like competitions, except all have a common set of deliverables for each challenge area for phase 1, and how each team accomplished those will be considered by the scoring committee for phase 2. And the process was created to also enable a greater level of engagement for each team, just to improve their team, especially with local communities, relevant stakeholders in New York State, increase the likelihood of success, and particularly for Challenge Area 1, include disadvantaged communities as part of the project team. And so the process, we hope, will result in increased project quality, and in cases where phase 1 team does not make it to phase 2, it may still help them achieve success and seed new approaches that can succeed in New York State. So we'll go to the next slide. Okay. Some red bars that are not showing up there. Interesting. What if we click to the next one real quick? Next slide. What happens? Okay, go to the next one. I think it's like action. Yeah, okay. So that's fine. That just highlights the phase 1 concept, right? So this is just listed to as questions arise about the total funding amount and the maximum per award. So we have a total funding amount for each challenge area that's listed there, and also a maximum per project amount. And so phase 1 has the same level of funding for both challenge areas. Phase 2 is different. And this table is really just meant to estimate a number of awards for phase 1 and phase 2 for the respective challenge areas. And the exact numbers for, say, the total number of awards is dependent on the proposals received and availability of funds. So we can go to the next slide. Yeah, and what I wanted to say also in the last one was that phase 1, we'll go into that a little bit later, but phase 1 is not subject to recoupment, and cost share is optional. Let's click through the next 2 slides. That's fine. That right there is good. And so for phase 2, you'll see there is a minimum cost share required. More cost share is fine. That may be used by the scoring committee for phase 2 evaluation in the project value category, where that also might demonstrate potential for increased commitment, ability to self-sustain. The guidance for cost share, how it can be accomplished and calculated, is in the PON summary document. That calculation sometimes goes wrong, so just take a look and let us know if you have questions. But that's a requirement for phase 2, and it's you can supply cost share for phase one. It's just not required. And the phase two contracts are subject to recoupment, which we'll go into a little bit later. And so finally, we can go to the next slide. So phase one guidance. So as we said, we're expecting the phase one contracts. They do have, to begin within 4 months of the phase one proposal due date. We expect a pretty accelerated timeline there because we have a predefined set of deliverables, statement of work for every team. And those are details that are in attachments C1 and C2, which are the statement of work template for both challenge areas. And so there's also a milestone payment schedule there. And for the phase two, everyone that receives a phase one award is eligible for phase two. And we'll shortly be announcing the phase two proposal due date as well. And yeah, so we anticipated a few touch points according to that milestone schedule that's in those documents throughout the phase one period. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, and so just to go over what it's looking like for phase two, as some asked. So phase one is predefined. The cost is predefined. Phase two, as you'll see in the application documents, we are asking for estimates of what the phase two plan will be. But the phase two submission at the end of phase two is the time to finalize that. And that will be for a maximum period of 24 months as listed before. And it will be based on the proposal that comes in. A contract will be negotiated between NYSERDA and the selected awardee. And each of those projects will be expected to be a contract with go, no go milestones. That's part of the negotiation process. And typically that involves a milestone payment schedule where a milestone is accomplished and then an agreed upon payment is received after accomplishing a given milestone. So we can go to the next slide where we have a bit of a pause. That was a lot of maybe information to digest. And so let's get into some of the questions here. Anyone want to take one off the
Where did we leave off at?
looking at, I think on that list, we could start from
Give me a time.
the time,
I don't want to call out someone's name.
6, maybe.
Oh, okay, why don't you read the question then?
Regarding page 2 of the PON summary, are applicants expected to include an independent third party? Yeah.
For phase two, do you require an independent party to do the M&B work?
Let's take that one later. Yes, potentially for demonstration projects with the grant money. It's not grant, it's contract money, cover manufacturing and installation of a product. Potentially that's possible, yes. And that would be part of the proposal and evaluated as well. So for challenge area 1, there's a question, will we need general liability insurance for work done on public land?
Chris, are you available to take that?
I believe.
Yes. So yes, the answer is yes. And I would direct people to look at the Exhibit E sample agreement that's included with the solicitation documents. That includes the information about required insurance.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. For eligibility, does the end use participant need to pay into the SBC, the system benefits charge? And yeah, I think we have that one answered there. Thanks, whoever did that. It says, please see page 6 of the PON summary. Demonstrations must take place at a site that plays into the Clean Energy Fund through the electric system benefits charge, unless significant statewide benefits are demonstrated. So if you have further questions on that, you can ask us, but that is indicated in the PON document. And so that means that you can make the case either way, for significant statewide benefits being demonstrated, but the priority there is for sites to pay into the Clean Energy Fund. Oh, so where do we submit the teaming list submission? Yeah, there's the email, netcarbon@nyserda.ny.gov. It's on the PON website, also in this presentation for the designated contact. It's in the PON documents. You can submit the teaming information to that according to the instructions on the PON website. Okay. Says, do you know whether there will be future rounds after this August deadline? That's hard to predict for this. It's all dependent on the funds and the proposals that come in. But we'll address that online. So our team is in the process of searching for a building to retrofit and test our ideas. Is an actual site required for submission to the PON? So yeah, specific site does not need to be identified in phase 1, but you should just take a look at the PON for what needs to be accomplished by what date. There is a demonstration in both cases, that's in both challenge areas, that's required, and so that will also be part of what the scoring committee is looking at for phase 2. And so you can take a look at the deliverables in the phase 2 proposal submission requirements. But at the time of phase 1, it's not required, but we'll double check that. But I believe that's the case. See, anyone feel free to take one if you see one.
Okay.
You can take. Yeah,
I can take this one on software if you'd like.
sure, Bob.
Our software helps to reduce emissions in the supply chain. If we partner with a product/building supplier to reduce emissions in their supply chain, would this qualify? That's a good question. Some of these things we rely on the scoring committee to determine. This would be one that I would put into that category. So I would say you'll need to describe it to us, outline the benefits of doing so, and the scoring committee will be the final adjudicator as to whether this qualifies. Did I miss anything there, Ziggy, do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's it. And I think that as you take a look, I think that some of these questions, if you if you look through the like the project narrative document, which we'll talk through a little bit in the next section, and the other documents that you need to submit, you'll see that, you know, like this is part of, you know, the solution, but there you want to make sure you address all the other requirements of the project, right? And you have that in the plan, in the statement of work. The phase 1 period is a time where people can work out some of those bugs, right? For phase 2 qualification, you still have to meet the you'll still be evaluated by the scoring committee on how well you answer the project narrative, the budget, and what your plans are, you know, for the future, and all the other things that are asked in the documents. So yeah, based on that, it's I don't think we can answer that question, as Bob said, but I think the documents you have to fill out will help you assess, you know, what else needs to be done. So maybe we can go on to the next. Anyone want to take one from the? Let's see here. Challenge area 2, buildings. I think, I think some of these we might start to answer, and then we'll go back to maybe at the end. Okay, so there's one that came up. Is there a fast track option to submit the proposal for both phase 1 and phase 2 simultaneously? No, it's in sequence. So phase 1 is needed to be completed first, and that makes you eligible for phase 2. So you are evaluated on everything that's done in phase 1, as well as the rest of your submission for phase 2. If you have developed a technology that fits completely in both challenge areas, which category should you choose? Yeah, so I think that we have that answered there. That determination, it's up to the proposer to check on the best eligibility. And I would say that take a look. There's nothing that restricts you from applying to both, but just that both challenge areas are separate. There are separate scoring committees. And so there's no restriction on submitting to both, but it would be a different proposal. Yeah, I think the rest of them we can probably best address in written form. So we'll try to get those and see what else comes, because we'll be posting the FAQ document. So why don't we, unless anybody wants to take another one right now. Okay, let's move on. We'll focus, you know, we've got probably almost a whole hour left to focus on questions if needed, to address questions. So we'll go on to the sections and the proposal requirements for the documents you need to submit now. So we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this shows you all of the documents that need to be submitted. And well, okay, so this links to all the documents available. And then what we're going to do right now, it could be a little confusing. There's a whole bunch of documents there at first. Some of them are informational that guide you to write your proposal, and some of them you have to submit for phase 1. That's the more immediate one. And then some of them will be relevant for phase 2. So we're going to go through that right now. just to make it more clear to everybody. We can go to the next slide. Sorry, my screen froze up. Okay, yeah, so this will be posted online. This is just starting from the documents that are listed on the website, just to let you know what absolutely has to be submitted and what is just there for optional and what's informational. That same information is also in the PON summary document, as well as in the proposal narrative, the top two documents that provide you with information. So the proposal narrative is the core document we'll go into a little bit, but it just shows you that the summary document is informational. It guides you to complete the other documents. The proposal narrative is the bulk of it. The proposal summary slide is really is just a quick synopsis of everything that's in the proposal narrative, and oftentimes the scoring committees find that valuable as a quick introduction to baseline the conversation. For proposers, it's often also been what we've heard helpful to sort of create a high-level message outline of what you're trying to do that could also be used to communicate it to other investors, others that may be interested in possibly supporting your work, you know, together or after NYSERDA funding. And so the red there, those are the informational documents. And so one thing that is good to make clear here at the bottom. So all challenge areas have to submit all of those, but at the bottom, which we try to make clear on the web, is C1 and C2. If you're applying to challenge area 1, C1, you fill out. If you're applying to challenge area 2, you have C2. And also note that when you're submitting right now, what's written at the top is, because of the IT structure we've used, it says concept paper in part of the submission, but it's actually going to be the phase 1 proposal. So let's go to the next slide. And that's just a continuation of the documents that are optional and also required. The attachment D, TRL-CRL calculator, we've not made that required right now for phase 1, and so it's a good tool to look at. It might help you judge your own TRL according to the criteria we have. We encourage it, but it's not absolutely required. But those questions might come up at a certain point, so it's a good idea to probably fill it out. And the remaining documents there, requirements listed, and then included in the proposal narrative is also space for supplementary attachments, such as letters of support, site agreements, resumes, which are optional but obviously important for the scoring committee to see. So next slide. And we just wanted to go over this additional slide for the proposal narrative. That's a form fillable document. Both challenge areas will use the same one. There are recommended word limits that guide you for each question. We think a lot of questions have come up about eligibility and what are you trying to do? Is this relevant? I think answering these questions will help guide you there. There's also places where graphics and figures can be inserted. And as we said, it's the core document to answer questions that will be evaluated by the scoring committee, and it's organized according to the evaluation criteria that we're going to go over later. And so proposers really should carefully review the proposal narrative, that they complete all of the sections. And please note that some of the sections are required for phase 1 and others only for phase 2. but failure to complete the designated sections may result in the proposal being rejected as non-responsive, such as for failing to answer a required question. So please take a look at this as soon as possible, and it may also help you identify gaps in areas that you have that you may need more team members to fill those in. And so it's a good idea to use this to guide and look at it as soon as possible. And so we hope that this allows you to focus on the content and actions that are most important to accomplish the goals of the PON and submit the proposal. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. So just some guidance on submission. There are, you can ask us about, these questions, but there's some tips here on the file size, how to reduce file sizes with PDF, zip files, Acrobat Pro. It's worth looking at if you have issues there. Attachments that you previously uploaded can be edited and resubmitted or replaced prior to 3 p.m. on August 20th. And the last one will be used that you replace or upload. Attachments can't be deleted, but you can upload a new version. And the most recent one will be the one saved and reviewed by NYSERDA. Letters of support, commitment, other information. There's not a designated slot, a separate submission slot for it, but one easy solution there is to combine those documents and include them at the end of attachment A, the proposal narrative, and upload that all as one file together. And so that's what we recommend for phase one. And let us know if you have any questions. So we can maybe do a pause right now and see if we can get something that, we can go to the next slide where we're going to go over proposal requirements for phase two, which we want to list to set the expectations, but just as a reminder, they are by invitation only and require phase one awards, but we're going to provide some information just to familiarize yourself with what to expect next. But this isnisn't to be required at this time. So let's see if we can get through a couple. Yeah, so, okay, well, that's fine. We can go to this slide. So for phase two, yeah, this is helpful actually to go over right now. There are a lot of the same files, say attachment A, most of it will be filled out. So for phase two, it's just filling out the rest of the portions that are indicated. And there will be a separate budget and statement of work for that because the phase two is a customized budget according to the proposer and the project needs, and it has a larger cap compared to phase one. And at the part of the phase two submission are the deliverables that are indicated in attachments C1 and C2. So that's the work that you're expected to do, complete, and submit documentation of, requiring, that's required for you to get paid from phase one, as indicated in the milestone payment schedule, and is also required for qualifying for phase two. So we go to the next slide. Yeah, so same things here. We'll probably clarify that. I believe if it may be that you don't have to submit some of those same documents again, but they're all going to be required. And if we already have them, then we won't we won't need you to resubmit them. And they're not changed from the phase one. So next slide. Okay, so we can go over this. I don't know if this contains everything about recoupment, but it's something that is to be considered for phase two. And do we want to first say what I think this slide maybe doesn't say exactly what the recoupment policy exactly is. So does anyone want to volunteer a voice track for that?
Sure, I can go ahead and do that.
Thanks, Bob.
I mean, the most important thing is to look at attachment E, and it will spell it out. But there's a fixed amount that NYSERDA receives. Our recoupment is capped at the level of our investment. If you receive $500,000 from us, we get paid $500,000 back, but we get paid with revenues. This is not a loan payment with fixed obligations. We only get repaid if the technology is successful in the market. So if there are sales, then we share in the financial success. If there are never any sales, there is no obligation to repay NYSERDA. As I said, it's capped at 1x. The obligation lasts for 15 years. And I'm not sure if there's too much more. Anything else I may have missed was spelled out in, will be, it's Article 8, 8.03 of the sample agreement. And if you have follow-on questions, you can get back to Ziggy or Renee Serbu.
Yeah, that's impressive, Bob, with the citing the sections.
Yeah, don't make me do that again, okay?
Yeah, I think as I think Bob explained it well, and referenced the document, the attachment E, and as we said before, it's not required. There's no recoupment for phase one, but it's something to consider for the for the future of the project, for activities that are up to the product development, but not the demonstration portion. So it's something to consider for the future, but hopefully it's not a sticking point at all for the phase one proposals. So, okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we've got some other questions that are building up here. See if we can cover them. Yeah, so we've got a question. Let's say, can cost share include time cost contributed to the project, or is it a cash contribution? And so, yeah, the instructions were take a look at page 7 of the PON summary document, and that breaks down all the different types of cost share that is valid to count. And so hopefully that.
Yeah, the only thing that I might add there, Ziggy, is that if you are counting time spent, it has to be time during the contract, after the contract is executed. It cannot be time spent paying prior to the contract. It can't be time spent on the proposal, things like that.
Correct.
But
Yeah.
time is something that is commonly recognized as cost share. But I think Ziggy's advice to review the PON document is well offered.
Yeah, and I think, Bob, what you said, I think that is listed there, that anything done before the period of the contract can't be counted. Yeah.
Great.
So for next one is for phase one, can we hire a consultant that specializes in market research and technical analysis? Would NYSERDA have a list of recommended consultants for this task? Yeah, and so somebody volunteered to answer that. Yes, proposals can include hiring a consultant, and no, NYSERDA does not recommend them. That's within the scope of your decision as a team of who else you need as a team member. And as we said, if you're looking for people, NYSERDA is not going to make a recommendation, because that making such a recommendation to any one team would give an unfair advantage. And so we do have the teaming list available for people to list their information. So NYSERDA doesn't endorse anyone on that list, but it's available there, and we post information that people ask us to post on there, and we'll update that next week by latest next Tuesday. So that answers that. See which ones we can address. Okay, so it says there's a question about Challenge Area 2. Challenge Area 2 projects must begin at the demonstration stage. It says, can you clarify what is meant by demonstration? If the product is already in use, is a new build / demonstration site required? Or can a previous build be used for demonstration purposes? Yeah, I think whoever answered that there in our summary document is right. I mean, page 9 of the PON summary document defines the demonstration. And for the Challenge Area 2, I think we help to define that a bit more, but generally speaking, demonstration is a product that's been commercialized, is available, and can be installed and evaluated by a third party to evaluate the performance of that product. So I think all of that is outlined there in the PON documents. Next one, there are deliverables listed in the C2 statement of work document. Are those suggested / example deliverables, or are those the deliverables that are required across every project? Yeah, and so I think we have that one answered here, that the phase 1 portions of the statement of work templates C1 and C2, including the deliverables, are the same for all project teams. Proposers should provide an outline of the phase 2 statement of work. And so those instructions hopefully should be there when you try to complete the document C1 and C2. But as you'll see, that those are the basis for the agreement that you'll form for phase 1. And so that's why they are spelling out all the required deliverables and the statement of work that everyone's expected to do in phase 1. And phase 2 is where the the larger the differences can be depending upon the scope of each individual project. So hopefully we've got that one. Yeah, as a teaming list question again. I don't know that I have to check if we've updated the teaming list, but no later than Tuesday we'll update it. We've definitely gotten some submissions on that, so we'll post that soon. Is an academic institution eligible to submit a proposal? Yes, that is a list of eligible proposers are included. I believe the only one specifically called out that is not eligible is a state, a New York State organization. That's specifically not eligible. So if you have any questions on that, let us know. But academic institutions are eligible and often apply. So I think we've covered now the questions I think we can relatively easily. So we can go on to the next slide. And so, yeah, we can go on the next one. So now we're going to be covering the proposal scoring criteria. And these, are the same for both challenge areas, except for indicated as different. They're also the same for phase 1 and phase 2, except where indicated differently with red text in the PON summary document. And so this is just something to pay attention to when you're completing your proposal narrative, the attachment A, just to make sure that you speak to all the questions there, as well as the further guidance that is attachments A1 and A2, depending upon your challenge area. So these are the general criteria, and the questions that the scoring committee is being tasked to ask regarding the proposals that were submitted. So that's got the proposed solution scope, project benefits, the market potential. We can go into the next slide. The proposer team and support, and as well as the project value. And as you see that one of the differences there for phase 2 is, phase 2 is the one where the cost share is required. It's great if you already have it for phase 1, but it's not a requirement. But that at the point of phase 2 proposal submissions, that will be evaluated closely. Are the cost sharing, co-funding contributions there? And so there are also, in addition to these evaluation criteria, program policy factors listed in the PON summary document, which also influence the selected awards. Next slide. Okay, yeah, so a number of questions came up. This information is posted here and on the website. So for questions about eligibility, the scope, challenge areas, your eligibility related to that, there's the Nat Carbon email. Myself, I'm the designated contact. Just, we have our team, but we try to keep it so that any question with a solicitation only comes to one individual, and we can handle it as a team to address those questions, just so there's not various individuals across NYSERDA that you're interfacing with, but are not the designated contact to answer your questions. And so those are the contact information listed there. It's also on the website. So yeah, please let us know. And again, as a reminder, the Nat Carbon email is the one where you submit your teaming information as well, if you want to be listed on the teaming list. Okay. Anything else anyone want to clarify here at this point? Anything else?
What about the SUNY one? There's a question: is SUNY considered a state agency or a university under this PON? SUNY is not a state agency.
Yeah.
So
no. Yeah, it's a university. Yeah. It's a university system. Yeah. So let's see the next slide. I think we're really at the point of just rounding up the questions. Or anything else from the panelists that would like to share that would help the proposers and others in addressing questions? So I think we have most of the questions answered that we can, I think, easily, and the rest, we're going to aim to okay, we can take some that have not been. Let me work my way up. So there's a question that, given that the maximum award for challenge 2 is 1.55, yeah, with 40% cost share. Are these grants designed to cover just small scale pilots? So yeah, it's 40% on the 1.5. The initial 50K does not have a cost share requirement for phase one, but that's up to the awardee, right? So if they are planning on doing an installation, right, where 40% cost share is the minimum, although you might have more, right, and it might be a larger project, but that the NYSERDA support might help you demonstrate a product that is, according to the requirements of this PON, right, to demonstrate the potential for a new product in the New York State market, and other requirements for the challenge. So the scale, is flexible there. So I think we addressed that one. Okay, so there's another question on challenge 2 buildings, phase 1 deliverable 6. What precisely do you mean by refined statement of work and budget for phase 2? We also read in the attachment A proposal narrative that the phase 2 statement of work and budget are not required in phase 1. Please confirm or deny this. Yeah, so there is a, hopefully that some of that was addressed. There's a separate set of documents that you're supposed to fill out for phase 1. So the statement of work is attachment C1 and C2. And so what we're doing is we're giving everybody that predefined statement of work for phase 1. We're asking that you complete that document, which is an estimate of what you plan to do for phase 2. When you submit for the actual phase 2 qualification, there's we can go back to this might help, maybe slide 29. If you could get that one, because the phase 2 submission does require a budget and a separate statement of work, which will be more detailed, and that will be more detail about your plans for phase 2, both the budget and a statement of work. So hopefully that answers that question.
I might just chime in a little bit here. Quite often we find that when we do a multi-stage endeavor, that in the early stages we learn things that we didn't know at the onset that might change how we approach the later stages. So what we're trying to do is be flexible here, and if that situation occurs, you found out some assumption that you made when you originally costed the second phase is not valid, what we're trying to do is give you the opportunity to revisit and reconsider an approach or expense that you had found may not still be appropriate after the completion of phase 1.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, so hopefully that helps clarify that, and we'll also, post our responses. Another question that is coming up here, I'm confused in the difference between phase 1 and phase 2 for challenge area 2. If we are introducing an existing product into the New York State market, what types of activities would fall under phase 1? Well, so yeah, we do have that listed out, that the activities, in the predefined statement of work in C2, those are listed out there, exactly what each team needs to do, how well they accomplish those, and fill out the remainder of the documents will help, will be submitted to the scoring committee for their phase 2 qualification. And the phase 2 there is the demonstration. So it would be, you're then ready to install, at a particular site, have a, an evaluation plan ready as well, as part of your phase 2 proposal. So that's an actual building installation. I don't know if Bob or anybody else wanted to chime in there.
Are people allowed to propose at the phase 2 level, or does everyone have to enter? Phase 2 is only by invitation, I think you said, right?
Yeah, everyone needs to submit to phase 1, and then do the phase 1 statement of work, and then that qualifies them for phase 2. So we don't have, that question did come up before, but we don't have it set up as a directive phase 2. But if that it's in the spirit also of milestone driven contracts that we have a lot, which is that if you feel that you are already prepared, and that you've got a lot of phase 1 already done, that's to your benefit. But the phase 1 is set up as a milestone contract as well, that all things are outlined and are expected to be accomplished, and how well they're accomplished is assessed by the scoring committee. So if you're ahead of the game, that's to your benefit, and then probably you have a better chance to qualify for phase 2 already.
Yeah. There's one other scenario I might mention here, and that is a scenario where a product already exists, but it's not in the New York State market because it's possibly a European product or a Canadian product. And in such case, phase 1 activities might include making sure that a product meets all the required building codes, that the correct workforce within New York State has the right skills, or if there are, special tools that, the workforce might not necessarily have that would be required for the installation. So just kind of, if it's an existing product, that's another scenario we commonly encounter, but I don't know.
Yeah, and that's all outlined there in the statement of work. It also does include assessment of the potential to manufacture and scale it up here in New York State. And so that's also part of the groundwork that needs to be done in phase 1. Say if it is, as Bob indicated, which is indicated in the PON, a product that's already been used in other markets, like it could be in Europe and Canada, where there might be a lot more such products available and validated in the market. They might not have been validated here in the New York State market. There might still be some codes and standards that need to be met, or they just need to be demonstrated for their functionality in relevant building typologies. All this is in the PON, as well as the potential to realistically scale them up here. So that's part of what's also outlined there, but hopefully that's all clear and contained in the in the statement of work for C2 that you would have to do for challenge area 2. Okay, so the link to, someone's having trouble with the link, so I can find the documents attachments to read through to prepare in the proposal. So hopefully the main PON summary website, which hopefully everybody has access to, it has all those listed, and we, hopefully the slides address that, showing which is which. And we'll probably send out a email follow-up, so everyone that was on this knows when the website was updated.
There's a question, Ziggy, about like waste materials from oil and gas industries. Is there any guidance you can give there? With regard to category 2, can waste materials from oil, gas industry be used for making added value building products with carbon sequestration? Or is that one we would have to defer to
I
scoring
would think,
committee
I
on?
would take a look at the PON, you know, the PON requirements, you know, and we try to, you know, rather than, I think, answer that without more information, you know, make the case that whatever you're proposing meets those challenge area requirements as they're listed out in A2, and use that to answer, you know, the questions in the proposal narrative. Attachment A is what I would say. Good point. Adam said, when are we going to drop the survey? Let's drop it now. We should have probably dropped it earlier as we've had some attendees drop off, but we'll post that on the website. We will, and Adam, if you're able to drop it in, if you got the link, you can go ahead and do that. We've got it. Okay, the link to the forms survey is there, just to get a gauge if you're planning to apply, into which challenge area, and you know, feedback on the webinar if it was helpful for you, or what else is confusing, what other type of information would you like to know that might help us in the future. How are we? So I think, you know, the rest of the questions, we'll leave that open for a few minutes there. We'll also post that. And I think the remainder of the questions, Bob, did you have any other suggestions?
Yeah, I was going to answer the one about the
Okay.
Is the maximum NYSERDA award of $1,555,000 include the 40% match, or can your total project cost be approximately $2,175,000, the 1.5 million plus 40%, 620,000? I'm going to answer this question slightly differently. I'm going to use numbers that I'm very comfortable with. Let's say that you have a effort that you're going to propose to us that's $1 million, all in $1 million. What NYSERDA will do is we will provide up to $600,000 for cost share, and then we would be looking for the proposer to provide the balance, the 40% or the $400,000. That is how we think of project cost share in that kind of framework.
Yeah, I think that the formula we should have in the PON summary document and proposal narrative. And just as a reminder, for phase 1, you don't have to have it, but for phase 2, yeah, it's right, Bob. I think what you were saying was 40% of the total project cost.
They were asking for an award of 1.5 million, so I'm assuming they must have been talking about phase 2.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully that addresses it. We'll post it on the web too. There's another question. Yeah, here I'm looking at the list. Is how do you define products? They must be physical products, or can be methodologies, technologies, or other types. So yeah, that depends on the challenge area. So clearly for challenge area 2, part of what's there needs to be a physical product. For challenge area 1, not necessarily. If part of the scope is product development, software tool could also be in scope. Okay. Anything else we should cover? Okay, so there was one that said, okay, is teaming required? What is NYSERDA's view on the value of a team versus a single entity? It's not required, certainly. It's whatever's needed to accomplish the project, and it's part of the evaluation criteria that's listed there. The project team, how well, does the scoring committee think the project team can accomplish that? So maybe Adam closed the chat, because I think people started entering and put it back in the Q&A. Hopefully people have the chat link, but we'll put it on the website just so people have it. So teaming's not required, but it may be helpful for a lot. Now for challenge area 1, as I said, you got to refer to the documents or requirements. There is a requirement for having members of a disadvantaged community that's relevant to the challenge to be part of the team. And so if for challenge area 1, yeah, so just take a look at that for the requirements to decide if you need to team with others or not. So, okay, does electric heat apply as a technology for challenge area 1? It wouldn't seem so. We'll try to address that more completely when we post it, because one of the requirements is that you are using vegetation that grows, plants, the photosynthesis that causes the passive cooling effect. So it's the green cooling challenge for that reason. Things that are able to cool, in this case, there are many, right, possibilities, but in our case, vegetation with the Natural Carbon Solutions portfolio that can provide a passive cooling effect with hopefully zero power. But that's, I would just take a look and see. It doesn't sound like that aligns with the challenge requirements for area 1, but take a look. So one question is a manufacturing extension partnership required for funding distributions? I'm not sure what that is, but I don't think so.
I would say no.
No, it's not in the PON as a requirement.
It can be included, but it's not required.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob. Okay, so we're dropping down a bit. Are we getting any more? Okay, yeah. All right, so we have another. Someone asked, why can I not see people's Q&A? Yeah, so what we did is made it for the Q&A function so that only the panelists can see it. If a partner is needed in order to install a product, does that partner need to be identified prior to the submission and included in the required documents? And so, yeah, it says no. It's not required, but selecting a subcontractor during the project, could be important. Attachment E, sample agreement, gives you more information on how to do that. If it's a critical part of the project, such as for phase 2, and critical team member, clearly that would be evaluated, in the scoring committee, how ready each team is to do what they're proposing to do.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, Ziggy, which you started to cover, is in the subcontracting section of the agreement, you need to look at it, the competitive procurement requirements. If the installation crosses the threshold requiring the competitive procurement, if it's not identified in the phase one, then in phase two, you will need to do a competitive procurement. But if you know who that installer is going to be when you submit phase one, and you submit it to us with their qualifications and their costs, when you get to phase two, you will not need to do a competitive procurement. So there, if you have questions about that, you should get back to Ziggy or Renee Serbu about handling that. But that is something to consider about an installation contractor who would be needed in the second phase. I hope that was clear.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, further questions, probably Renee would be able to address on that best, with her contact information. Yeah, there's a question about I think UHI. I think they're referring to Urban Heat Island, about a project performed at a different location. And can you use that finding for references? I think I understand that. Yeah, certainly. I think that it's definitely of interest to just look at strategies that have worked in other places and how those could be applied to address some of the challenges in New York State. And that seems like it's probably related to Challenge Area 1, I'm guessing. Hopefully that addresses that question. Okay, I don't think any more are coming in at this point. The attendees are dropping, but we can wait another couple minutes and see if anything bubbles up. Okay, so we got some answers to those questions. Okay. Okay. So it was, what was the thing about if the project does not work, then you do not have to pay back NYSERDA? Bob, you want to take that one?
Yeah, that had to do with NYSERDA's repayment provisions, recoupment, we also call it. And I guess if you make it to the phase two and you complete the phase two, you're subject to recoupment provisions. Now, NYSERDA gets a share of revenues derived from a technology that is commercialized with our support. But if a product is never commercialized, if there are no sales are ever made, then the proposer is under no obligation to repay NYSERDA for our funding. Hope that answers the question.
It sounded like it did to me, Bob, but we'll see if anything more comes up. And then there was one about document E. Will explain what needs to be known about general liability. I think so, right? Chris, Bob, that's attachment E.
Chris, if you're still online, I'll let you take the first swat at that one.
Yeah, so Exhibit E does cover the insurance requirements and which kinds of insurance and generally the expected level. So I would look there first. I'm actually looking up as I do not have the memory for numbers that Bob does. I'm looking at
Really, it's
it's
$1
under
million.
Article 11 and Exhibit E covers the kinds of insurance that would typically be required.
Okay. We are still open for questions. Let's see if anything else is coming in. How about we give it to 2:45, and then we can maybe close at 2:45 if no other questions come in. If somebody is on and you feel your question was not answered or needs to be more clear, then feel free to ask it again or clarify.
And just a reminder that we will be putting out a Q&A document that answers the questions that were asked today, and anything that didn't get answered in detail or clarity, we'll try to answer in that document.
I'm going to answer. There's a question about like Article 803. Let me just try to answer that quickly. If you look at the sample agreement, there's a section for R&D contracts, which applies to what we do. And Article 803 is called calculation of payments to NYSERDA. So that has to do with the recruitment payments. So that's why it was cited earlier. That if you want more information about the requirements of NYSERDA's recoupment policy, Article 803, calculation of payments to NYSERDA, is where you would most likely find the answers. On the $1 million of coverage, that was in attachment E, and that was, I think, that was, scroll down.
That's going to be in Article 11.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
That covers the types of insurance and the minimum limits for the insurance types. And just a caveat on this, that is a sample agreement. Depending on the exact nature of a proposal, there will be certain portions taken in or out, such as if it's a demonstration only, then and recoupment doesn't apply, then certain sections will come out. And depending on the nature of the project, the levels for insurance may change if it's a higher risk project or a lower risk project. And that would be part of the negotiation of the contract.
Okay, there was one more here that let's clarify. It's a max NYSERDA will provide is like 1.55 million for phase 2, or if the total project cost is 1.55. So yeah, for challenge area 2, the phase 2 we've set at 1.5, and then the phase 1's 50K. Could we, Adam, could we open the chat again in the, to add the survey? Okay, so we have this in the chat now. Does that mean the Q&A is still there or separate from the chat? I think so, right? Yeah, okay, there's a separate chat.
Yes, it should still be there.
Okay, yes, there's a chat and a Q&A. So if you have more questions, try to look at that and put it into the Q&A, not the chat. The chat everybody can see. And survey link hopefully is there for everyone. How about a last call for questions? And if we don't have any more, what does everybody think about closing it out? Bob, Chris, Trisha, Adam, what do you guys think? Okay. Good to close. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We appreciate all your questions and interest. And as we said, we'll be posting updates to the web and look forward to some great proposals and really compelling approaches to help make impact in these areas. So thank you to all the panelists, event staff. Thanks for answering all the questions, fielding all of them. And thanks for your interest, and we'll be in touch on any updates as well with the PON. And if you want to share your information, if you haven't gotten email blasts already, please do that in the survey link. There's the opportunity to do that. And with that, we'll close and have a good rest of your day. Thank you very much. Bye.